Thomas Tuchel has been sacked as Chelsea manager. He won the Champions League, the Club World Cup. He's done very well with them. But following a defeat to Dinamo Zagreb in the Champions League, he's gone. And so to talk about why that's happened now, I am joined by the Athletics Chelsea reporter, Liam Twomey. Hello, Liam.
Hello.
Good to have you here. Now, as we've said, Thomas Tuchel's won a lot of stuff. He's done very well with Chelsea. But they've been in bad form for a long time. Haven't started the season very well, and there's various tactical reasons for that. There's lots of unrest at the club following a big takeover, but it seems very much like the ownership, Todd Bowley, has decided that Tuchel will be gone before the Dinamo Zagreb game. Is that true, and how has that come about? What's happened here?
That's what we're being told, yeah, that the ownership's thinking on this sort of crystallised before the Dinamo game, that they were taking a longer view based on the broader trends of Thomas Tuchel's tenure. And I think when you look at it, he obviously came in January 2021 when Chelsea were in drift. He turned them into Champions League winners. I think it was one of the most impressive high-end coaching jobs we've seen in terms of immediate impact. They deservedly won the Champions League in Porto. And then for the first half of last season, they looked like genuine Premier League title challengers, building on that success. It was very much built on the same incredible defence, the pressing system that Tuchel had implemented. The attack still wasn't great, but there was still reason to believe that Tuchel would get that right in time. And then basically from December 2021 to now, Chelsea have been a different team. They've been making mistakes defensively. The attack has not improved. In fact, in recent weeks, it's got worse in terms of players' decision-making and the general flow of things. And then you add to that the context that we've been hearing from our reporting, the tension between Tuchel and the new owners over the summer, what has been a very stressful and eventful summer for Chelsea, with the takeover only happening in late May, and then of course a massive push to get this squad in position for the new season. Tuchel, we're told, and he's alluded to this on the record anyway, that he didn't particularly love being thrust into a much more central role in Chelsea's recruitment, or at least, giving his opinion on players.
Well, that's a big one. I mean, let's go through them in kind of order. So a lot of the issues here appear to be that there's obviously stuff on the pitch that isn't working very well at the moment. It's kind of tactically, those sorts of things. But a lot of the issues are outside of football and more long-term strategic with the new ownership. So let's look at what has annoyed or disappointed the ownership and why they've decided to pull the trigger. And then we should look at what's annoyed Thomas Tuchel and maybe what was making him unhappy, and then we should go into what's next. So in terms of what's annoyed the ownership, or maybe not annoyed, but why they've decided to not kill him, but get rid. So this long-term strategy, what is it they're looking for? Why is he not their guy?
I think you saw Todd Bowley and Bedad Eghbali be particularly visible around Cobham over the summer, and they were in the US. Jose Feliciano as well, the other co-founder of Clear Lake Capital, were very much around the squad during that US pre-season tour, and they've been at Cobham reasonably regularly since. They are far more contactable for the players and for the staff than certainly Roman Abramovich was. And I think, they've also been... They mentioned in the statement, getting rid of Tuchel, that they've been taking 100 days in their ownership. And that has very much been a review of all aspects of the club. And some decisions they'd already come to, of course, getting rid of Petr Cech, Marina Granovskaya, Bruce Buck, a lot of the football structure above Tuchel. But it's been evaluating everyone, including Tuchel. And I think the conclusion that they drew in terms of Tuchel and the players was that he wasn't reaching them to a high enough level anymore, that there were too many disaffected players, as much with Tuchel's man management as with anything else. I think a lot of people at Chelsea are well aware that Tuchel is an elite tactician. That has not really been the issue as much. It's more been managing this squad. You saw what happened going into the window. Basically, 5 of Chelsea's 7 attackers wanted to leave. and were deeply unhappy with their situations. That was a reflection on Tuchel's management as much as anything else. And that was something the owners were paying attention to.
So it's,
and then there was
sorry, Liam. So it's kind of like a bit of a cultural change within the club, strategically, the management style. So the way they want to, the way that Bowley and his co-owners and whoever's running the club want to run the entire club, not just the first team, is different to how it was before. And Tuchel's management doesn't really fit within that system. That's one of the reasons why they've
at the risk of using Manchester City ownership's favourite word, holistic. It does seem to be along those lines, and I think culture is a key word here. I think they just felt that the tone that Tuchel was setting was not the right one. There was an impression, rightly or wrongly, I'm sure Tuchel would probably contest this, that he wasn't fully committed, or at least as fully committed as he had been earlier in his Chelsea tenure. Of course, he's had a lot to deal with personally as well, with his divorce and a lot of stuff that's been covered in the UK newspapers that I think has probably been more public than he would have liked, to be honest.
Well, I mean, this is maybe relevant because another thing that has been said of the ownership with their reporting is that the communication between the manager and players has changed. He's had a different kind of demeanour at times, and the atmosphere in the training ground has been described as tense. So if the tactic stuff is all well and good, but if he's not getting the motivation through to the players, that's not going to fit in with what the new owners want to have going forward. And if it looks like he's maybe not their guy, now is the right time to pull the trigger, is it?
Yeah, and there have been questions about Tuchel in this regard at previous clubs. That the main red flags that were raised when Chelsea were thinking about appointing Tuchel was him managing upwards, but he's also had problems managing dressing rooms in the past. And I think the surprising thing about this happening at Chelsea is that they don't have a Kylian Mbappe, they don't have a Neymar. This isn't
a Ronaldo.
Well, of course, and Tuchel had plenty of say in that. But this isn't the most difficult dressing room to manage in terms of personalities. You could say maybe Lukaku was troublesome to a degree last season, but generally, I think early on in his time, Tuchel was pleasantly surprised at how easy this group was to work with. But over time, more and more players grew disaffected with the way that Tuchel was managing them, whether it was playing them out of position, whether it was losing trust in them and suddenly not playing them and not explaining why, whether it was some of the sort of histrionics on the touchline when players would make mistakes or things would go wrong, the way he would talk to them in training. Some of this stuff we reported earlier in the year, saying that several of Chelsea's attackers were unhappy, not just with the way Tuchel was using them, but with the way he was talking to them.
So these management people upstairs are seeing the squad management maybe is not perfect, and players disaffected, losing control of that sort of bit. And so communication is key in any business. I know that because I know business. And so when you lose that, that's probably one of the reasons then that they decided he's not their long-term guy. That's what they're looking at. He's not the long-term, so that's maybe the thing that's gone wrong. But as the things that might have annoyed Tuchel and what might have made him be not himself, is obviously his personal issues. We've kind of brushed on that. No need to go into that too much. Other things that, like Petr Cech leaving is different because, again, the cultural shift. Petr Cech was involved a lot on the training ground or day-to-day things, helping with transfers. And tell me about this, about Tuchel not enjoying being part of the summer recruitment process, which is far more... it sounds very much like they kept talking to him all the way through this, whereas before he'd be able to sit back and be a coach rather than being involved with all the different transfer incomings.
Well, when Tuchel came to Chelsea, one of the things that he really liked was that it was an elite club, everything was set up to win, but it was also set up for him to just coach. And he had that structure above him. He had a very good relationship with Petr Cech, who played a huge role in getting him to the club in the first place. But he also had a very productive relationship with Marina Granovskaya. And I think the departures of those two, particularly Cech, I mean, Tuchel did not miss an opportunity in the last few weeks to bring the conversation back to how much he enjoyed working with Cech, and it felt quite pointed.
Yeah, you can't really do that if you're talking to people upstairs, can you? Like, if I was slagging off my bosses, you can't do that Certainly
Well,
young.
exactly. And when it comes to the recruitment thing this summer, I think there's always an element of people talking out of both sides of their mouth here, because if you ask Tuchel and you ask any coach in the world, would you like more influence on which players are brought in to play in your team? I think they'd all say yes, because at the end of the day, you get judged on how these players do. So if you can get more of an influence on which players are signed, which players are, just as importantly, not signed, then most coaches would take that. And I think Tuchel did appreciate that in a sense, but I think he also found it incredibly stressful.
I mean, if you're in any job though as well, right? Say you're at your job and then you get new owners come in or a new manager comes in and they just do things in a way that doesn't sit well with you. And personally you don't like it. It's the way it worked before worked very well. Suddenly it's now you're being asked questions you don't want to be asked, or you're being involved in conversations you don't want to have to be. You've got loads of meetings. This meeting could have been an email, that sort of stuff. You all know this. It's similar. I mean, it's not exactly the same as that, but these are the sort of things come across, right?
I think playing fatigue is a factor as well. When you look at the last few months of last season with everything that was going on with Abramovich and the bid process and everything that Tuchel was having to talk about that wasn't Chelsea's performances on the pitch.
Yeah.
And the kind of leadership, the almost statesman-like leadership that he was expected to provide in the void at the top of the club. And then you follow that with a summer which would normally be his downtime. And instead, he's in constant conversations, at least early in the summer, with ownership, giving his opinions on players, on potential deals that are being offered or that Chelsea might be pursuing. It's a lot. And then you go straight from that into a brand new season with a group of players that are already kind of cooling on you.
And not getting the preferred attacking options before the last day of the window as well.
Yeah, and you've got a squad that is in flux because a lot of players are being signed, and the players that are there know that, and I think that can be quite destabilising as well, because there are players coming in to challenge you for your place, maybe take your place. And I think the spirit that powered Chelsea's run to Porto in 2021 and kind of underpinned the start of that title charge last season, it almost felt like it died at the Bernabeu when they went out of the Champions League. It was the last thing they were playing for, and then just the culmination of everything since.
That's a great point.
And the relationship with Tuchel has just suffered with that, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So, we know all the things we know so far is that it was decided before the Dinamo Zagreb game. This is a long-term plan from the ownership. It's based on, like we talked about, things like Tuchel seeming a bit detached from the squad and things he's doing, seeming a bit frustrated with those above him. They want someone who works with them, and they're not a hire and fire type of organisation. Like Dave Roberts, who's the manager of Todd Bowley's LA Dodgers baseball team, he's been there for 7 years and just recently signed a new 3-year deal. They're not people who come in and chop and change whatever. It's all built for long-term success. And so on that note, now that Tuchel's gone, and we can move on to whoever happens next with Chelsea, the managers listed are...
Graham Potter is
He's good.
The first choice.
Yeah.
Mauricio Pochettino is also very much there. I think what you're seeing, especially with Potter being at the top of the list, is not the stereotypical mindset of the new splashy owner. There's been a desire to look at Chelsea's new owners that way over the summer, particularly the numbers they were throwing around in the transfer market. But there's always been an insistence that what they're doing is strategic. It's based on responsible, disciplined investment, even if it is aggressive, and we're talking about big numbers here. And Graham Potter's not the kind of guy that you go for if you just want a name. He's never won anything. He's never coached at this level. It is a risk. It's actually quite a bold appointment, quite an exciting one if it comes off. He has to say yes, of course. He
does like it at Brighton
Tottenham before.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. He'd be great there. Very qualified manager. His teams play really good football, and the team looks very balanced. But this is the thing. The people above Potter at Brighton are very well structured and very well. It's a very well run club, and that's perhaps a lot of why he's been able to do so well there is that it's so well run above him that then what you see on the pitch reflects what's upstairs. And Chelsea's the squad's in a bit of flux. It seems very much like Bowley is an interim sporting director at the moment, isn't he, at Chelsea? So very much their structure is in flux. So it could be that it's difficult to get the right person in now.
Well, and the other aspect to all of it is that, if you were really being guided by best practice and really committed to best practice above all else, you'd appoint a sporting director first and then go to that person, or even during the recruitment process for that person, say, who would you hire as the coach? What are your thoughts on that? And that they would lead that next hire. But Chelsea can't do that now because of the timing of this sacking. They need a coach sooner rather than later. That everything we're being told is they're motivated to get someone in as soon as possible. And that means whoever the next sporting director will be is inheriting the coach. And we've seen at other clubs that can be a problematic situation in itself. So I wouldn't I wouldn't begrudge Graham Potter if he was looking at all of this thinking, there are just too many unknowns here. As great an opportunity as it is, there are a lot of unknowns about who I would be working for, how it would all work. And of course, you're catapulting yourself into a completely different stratosphere of expectations, and a different type of player that you would be coaching than you would be at Brighton in terms of reputation and ego, in some cases.
Yeah, what's the saying? Why would you give up a good thing? If you're having fun, why would you leave, huh? Money isn't everything. I mean, I'm sure you'd have a good time, achieve more success. It doesn't matter. Anyway, that is what's happened with Todd? That's what's happened with Thomas Tuchel being sacked from Chelsea. Thank you, Liam, for your input and expert knowledge.
Thanks, pleasure. And I better get back to it.
Yeah, you have to do more reporting now. Okay, stay tuned for Tifo IRL. Stay tuned. That's what you do now in the year 2022. We'll have more on other Chelsea stuff coming up later on. So subscribe to the channel, please. We'd like that. See you later. Have fun.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic brings you the best sports journalism in the world in a personalised experience, connecting you with the stories and teams that you care about the most. There's coverage of 13 sports, plus direct access to world-class journalists through live Q&As, discussions and podcasts. Not to mention, it's all ad-free. And you can try it now for free for 30 days by clicking the link in the description.